I'd like to begin today with a quotation. We see clearer than daylight that in the process of the last days, as love waxes cold and iniquity abounds among mankind, perilous times are at hand for men's souls. Now my question for you is, who said that and when was it said? Now that could have been said by any number of our modern day prophecy teachers or television evangelists, but in reality that quotation came from a 10th century writer living in France at the end of the first millennium. He had good reason for thinking in his mind that he was living in the last days. The signs of the times were evident in abundance. There was war everywhere. Nation rose against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Famine had grown worse until cannibalism had even appeared. Plague was widespread and deadly. In 993 A.D., earthquakes shook Italy as Mount Vesuvius erupted. Quote, belching forth, as a writer of the time described it, a multitude of vast stones mingled with sulfuric flames. There were signs in the heavens. In 998 A.D., two great meteorites fell to earth, one in Germany and the other near the river Alba. Finally, as the year 1000 A.D. approached, a very bright meteor appeared in the sky that seemed to have the head of a snake. One writer of the time described it, quote, it appeared in September and remained visible for nearly 3 months. It shone so brightly that its light seemed to fill the greater part of the sky. Seeing current events and as the fulfillment of Bible prophecy is not unique to our day. As early as the 2nd century, Tertullian wrote, what terrible wars, both foreign and domestic, what pestilences and what famines, and quakings of the earth. History has never recorded as such. The 2nd century prophet, so-called Montanus, set a date for the bodily return of Christ to the earth. His prediction, of course, failed, but it did not deter others from setting dates. The sack of Rome by the Vandals in 410 A.D. was thought to be a sign of the end. In the 6th century, Pope Gregory assured the world that the return of Christ could not be far off, since so many prophecies were being fulfilled in that day. Here's his quote. Of all the signs described by our Lord as presaging the end of the world, some we see already accomplished. For now we see nation rise against nation as never before in the annals of history. Earthquakes overwhelm countless cities. Pestilences we endure without interruption. It is true that we do not yet behold signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, but these cannot be far off, and we may infer from the changes in the atmosphere. As the last day of 999 A.D. approached, the Basilica of St. Peter's was filled with throngs and masses of people weeping and trembling. They were worshippers waiting for the end of the world, according to one writer of the time. Land and homes and household goods were given to the poor as a final act of contrition to absolve the hopeless from a life of sin. Some Europeans sold their goods and traveled to Palestine to await for the second coming. With the birth of the Inquisition in 1209, many saw the sign of the end. The Black Death in 1347 killed millions. It was seen as a prelude to the end of the world. Martin Luther himself frequently expressed the opinion that the end was very near. In 1532 he wrote, the last day is at hand. My calendar has run out. I see nothing more from the Scriptures. The great earthquake in Lisbon in 1755 was interpreted as a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. The French Revolution was enough evidence for many that the world had endured into its last days. In the middle 1800s, a Bible prophecy student named William Miller believed that through careful study and analysis, he had unlocked the secrets of the book of Revelation. Using the prophecies of Daniel, along with the book of Revelation, Miller calculated that the second coming would occur in March of 1843. By using the tools of mass communication available in that day, Miller established a huge following. As March 1843 drew near, thousands gathered at Miller's rallies to learn how to prepare for the soon appearance of the Lord. As the predicted date came and went, Miller's followers experienced what was called a great disappointment and even trauma. Miller himself went back to the drawing board and realized that he had neglected to take into account the 0 year of transition between AD and BC. So he reset his calendar, and the date for the second coming is March 1844. As this date passed without any event, the Millerite movement fragmented, and the whole field of Bible prophecy interpretation fell into disrepute. Another 19th century Bible prophecy student, John Darby, learned an important lesson from Miller and his great disappointment. Darby did not set a date for the second coming. Instead, he emphasized the signs of the times. Unlike Miller, who saw Bible prophecy linked to particular dates, Darby saw Bible prophecy as describing a series of dispensations in which God dealt differently with man. According to Darby's scheme, the church age was a great parenthesis in which the prophetic clock had stopped ticking. Darby believed that nothing of prophetic significance could take place until the end of the church age, and the signs of the times would warn saints to be prepared for the soon departure from earth in the rapture, at which time the prophetic clock would again begin to tick. Darby saw the signs of the times all around: wars and rumors of wars, increasing wickedness, new technologies, the age of steam, the age of electricity, the coming of the telephone and the telegraph. These were all seen as signs that the rapture would take place at any moment. As the technology of mass communication has improved in our day, so has the ability of Bible prophecy writers to bring their message to a mass audience. The result has been an almost universal assumption that we are now living in the last days, and the end must be very near. Probably the best known modern writer on Bible prophecy is Hal Lindsey. In his 1970 book, The Late Great Planet Earth, he updated Darby's theological assumptions and applied them to what were then current events: the Cold War, the fear of nuclear holocaust, the communist Chinese, the restoration of Israel. The Late Great Planet Earth was a runaway bestseller. It became the best-selling nonfiction book of the 1970s. In Hal Lindsey's book, he tapped into a deep-seated psychological fear of nuclear war and environmental calamity that pervaded the Cold War decades of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Suddenly, the accumulated and often unspoken fears of the modern world could be explained and understood in the light of ancient prophecies of the Bible. The popularity and sales performance of The Late Great Planet Earth did not go unobserved by publishers. Lindsey became only the first of many books on Bible prophecy, interpreted in the light of current events. In Armageddon Now, in 1977, author Dwight Wilson predicted that world events would swell to a cataclysmic crisis in the Middle East well before the year 2000. Reginald Edward Duncan predicted in The Coming Russian Invasion of America that the millennial reign of Christ would begin in 1979. Mikhail Dahl in The Midnight Cry predicted that the present age would end by 1980. When the year 1988 was seen as especially important when it arrived because it marked the end of the terminal generation, as it was seen by prophecy writers, because of the resettlement of Israel in 1948. In Edgar C. Whisenant's 18 Reasons Why the Rapture is in 1988, it's probably the best known of many books predicting the end of the world, based on the 40 years since the reestablishment of the Jewish state. He said of his calculations, "Only if the Bible is in error am I wrong, and I say that unequivocally. There's no way biblically that I can be wrong, and I say that to every preacher in town." When 1988 came and went, Whisenant, like Miller, discovered that he had neglected to take into account the 0 year beginning each millennium. He readjusted his calculations 1 year and bravely released another book, The Final Shout, Rapture Report, 1989. Now, why is all of this important? And why should we take all of these things into account that I've just read to you? All of this historical information. It's because many today claim that we are living in the last days. Many today claim that we are living at just approaching the end of the world, and the signs are all around us. If anyone believes that today, and if anyone says that today, we should at least know that everyone who ever said it before was wrong. And there's every reason to believe that everyone who says it today is also wrong.